Hey, welcome back to an experimental live read by Adult Brain. This is Graham. I'm Graham. This is Adult Brain. That's my cat, Mocha, who just left my lap. She's very fussy this morning. I don't know what's going on, so hopefully she doesn't interrupt too much. But we are reading the rest of chapter 5 in Ancient America. I'm just going to scroll up here to where I'm reading. Mitla. It starts at the subchapter Mitla. And we're just showing you how the sausage is made here. Basically, we are not AI. We are real people. This is how I do it, kind of somewhat how I do it. I mean, I would do it on full screens, but I'm going to share my screen with you now, and I'll show you. But this is the 1871 book by Baldwin called Ancient America, Notes on American Archaeology. It's pretty interesting, talking about Central America and Mexico and stuff like that. So here we are in the I stopped it yesterday right in this part here. So I've got the recording right here. So I'm going to just clean up the spot where I left off here and make sure that record level is, and I'm going to move this screen a bit because my cat keeps pushing it over this morning. She's got an obsession with the side of my monitor. So yeah, welcome. Let's go through this here. We'll do it. We'll do the rest of this chapter. This is let me just quickly describe it. This is chapter 5, Ancient America in Notes. This was written in 1871. We went through the Mound Builders. Who are the Mound Builders? If you're interested in all that and what they thought of ancient America back in the 1800s, go to our live tab. And I started this week, and I think I did 3 or 4 of these sessions. So now we're in the middle of chapter 5, Mexico and Central America. We went through Palenque and Copan. Now we're at Mitla. We'll get to like Chichen-Itza and stuff. And then next week this week will be chapter 6, Antiquity of the Ruins. Whence came this civilization? Ancient Peru, the Aztecs, Peruvian ancient history, all that kind of stuff. So here we are. Where are we? Okay, letting Owaka. Hopefully the pronunciations aren't this bad on this in this session here. Mitla. The ruins called Mitla are in the Mexican state of Oaxaca, about 12 leagues east from the city of Oaxaca. They are situated in the upper part of the Great Valley and surrounded by a waste, uncultivated region. At the time of the Spanish conquest, they were old and much worn by time and the elements. But a very large area was then covered by remains of ancient buildings. At present, only 6 decaying edifices and 3 ruined pyramids, which were very finely terraced, remained for examination, the other structures being now reduced to the last stage of decay. Okay, I just forgot to maximize this PDF, and we'll stop and take a quick look at the picture here. Whoops. Okay, let's see. So here's figure 31, the Great Hall at Mitla. There's figure 30, the ruins at Mitla. We already looked at that yesterday. And we'll jump back into it here. Figures 30 and 31 present views of some of these structures as given by von Tempsky. Figure 32 from Charney's photographs shows a ruins at Mitla. Check. This is going to be, I'm going to have to recenter this. Just give me a sec here. I'm going to recenter this PDF. I had to connect my Adobe with Google this morning. That was annoying. I don't know why it needs me to do that. Okay, here we go. Check. These important ruins were not described by Stevens and Catherwood. Captain Dupay's work gives some account of them, and Desiree Charnay, who saw them since 1860, brought away photographs of some of the monuments. Four of the standing edifices are described by Dupay as palaces, and these, he says, were erected with lavish magnificence. They combine the solidity of the works of Egypt with the elegance of those in Greece. And he adds, but what is most remarkable, interesting, and striking in these monuments, and which alone would be sufficient to give them the first rank among all known orders of architecture, is the execution of their mosaic relievos, very different from plain mosaic, and consequently requiring more ingenious combination and greater art and labor. All right, I'm going to take a quick break there and we'll go look at these pictures here. I had to scroll down 2 pages to keep that sentence running, which I think is good enough. I'm a little more pickier when editing on my own. So I'm going to try this again. Expanding it like that. There's the ruined palace at Mitla. Kind of a bit of a smudgy picture. But interesting to see how these guys sketch this out. These guys, Baldwin, John Baldwin, I think he's the one that made these sketches by pencil, like all just like sketched by hand. He did take some pictures, I guess. So there's the two pictures. Now I'm going to go see if I can. Let me just do this first, maybe get back to what it was. If I click that, shouldn't it take me right? It doesn't take me right back there. It's just, it's crazy how it doesn't get back to my settings. Now I have to recenter everything. That's not very smooth for live streaming. Where was I? All right, here we go. I'll try a different way next time. They're inlaid on the surface of the wall, and their duration is owing to the method of fixing the prepared stones into the stone surface, which made their union with it perfect. Does that remind us of anything like the Cyclopean stonework all over the world? Figure 33, taken from Charnay's photograph, shows part of the mosaic decoration on a wall of one of the great edifices at Mitla. The general character of the architecture and masonry is much like that seen in the structures at Palenque, but the finish of the workmanship appears to have been more artistic and admirable. These ruins are remarkable among those of the country where they are found. All who have seen them speak much as Dupay speaks of the perfection of the masonry, the admirable design and the finish of the work, and the beauty of the decorations. Their beauty, says Monsieur Charnay, can be matched only by the monuments of Greece and Rome in their best days. One fact presented by some of the edifices at Mitla has a certain degree of historical significance. There appears to be evidence that they were occupied at some period by people less advanced in civilization than their builders. Monsieur Charnay, describing one of them, points out this fact. He says of the structure, "It is a bewildering maze of courts and buildings with faces ornamented with mosaics and relief of the purest design, but under the projections are found traces of paintings wholly primitive in style." Come on, am I really getting a text right in the middle of this that I need to check? Ugh. Mom. But under the projection. Sorry, just in case. But under the projections are found traces of paintings wholly primitive in style, in which the right line is not even respected. These are rude figures of idols and meandering lines that have no significance. Excuse me. Similar paintings appear with the same imperfection on every great edifice in places which have allowed them shelter against the ravages of time. These rude designs associated with palaces so correct in architecture and so ornamented with panels of mosaic of such marvelous workmanship put strange thoughts in the mind. To find the explanation of this phenomenon, must we not suppose these palaces were occupied by a race less advanced in civilization than their first builders? 2 miles or more away from the great edifices here mentioned toward the west is the Castle of Mitla. It was built on the summit of an isolated and precipitous hill of rock, which is accessible only on the east side. The whole leveled summit of this hill is enclosed by a solid wall of hewn stone 21 feet thick and 18 feet high. This wall has salient and retiring angles with curtains interposed. On the east side, it is flanked by double walls. Within the enclosure are the remains of several small buildings. The fields of these ruins were very. Let me just redo that quickly. Scroll up while I'm breaking. The field of these ruins. The field of these ruins was very large 300 years ago. At that time, it may have included this castle. An astronomical monument. In this part of Mexico, Captain Dupay examined a peculiar ruin in which he gave the following account. Near the road from the village of Tamanalco. Lamanalco. Tlamalauco. Let me just double check that. Let me just double check that before we go on. Where is the history of my assistant helping me with this book? Okay, let's see here. TL. Sometimes it's hard to read in these PDFs. TLAL. Tlamanalco. Manalco. Tlamanalco. Yeah. Tlamanalco. Even when you know how to do it, it's hard to do for me. And then I'll get the next word in there too. Meccayapan. What? Which may appear in ancient, likely refers to a variant or misspelling of Mayapan. Mecamacan. What the? Near the road to that called Mayapan. I'm going to just say it like that. Mayapan. Oh, this is so hard. Tlamanalco. Okay, here we go. Near the road from the village of. I'm going to keep. I can't even see the YouTube screen because I've got my assistant open here. So near the road from the village of Tlamanalco, Nalco, Mayapan. Okay, here we go. Near the road from the village of Tlamanalco to that called Mayapan, about 3 miles east of the latter, there is an isolated granite rock which was artificially formed into a kind of pyramid with 6 hewn steps facing the east. The summit of this structure is a platform or horizontal plane well adapted to observation of the stars on every side of the hemisphere. It is almost demonstrable that this very ancient monument was exclusively devoted to astronomical observations. For on the south side of the rock are sculptured several hieroglyphical figures having relation to astronomy. The most striking figure in the group is that of a man in profile, standing erect and directing his view to the rising stars in the sky. He holds to his eye a tube or optical instrument. Below his feet is a frieze divided into 6 compartments with as many celestial signs carved on its surface. It has been already stated that finely wrought telescopic tubes have been found among remains of the Mound Builders. They were used, it seems, by the ancient people of Mexico and Central America, and they were known also in ancient Peru, where a silver figure of a man in the act of using such a tube has been discovered in one of the old tombs. Ruins farther south. Old ruins, of which but little is known, exist in Guatemala, Honduras, San Salvador, and the more southern portion of Central America. Mr. Squire, who tells us more of them than any other explorer, says, I heard of remains and monuments in Honduras and San Salvador equal to those of Copan in extent and interest. He mentions the ruins of Opico near San Vicente in San Salvador, which cover nearly 2 square miles and consist of vast terraces ruins of edifices, circular and square towers, and subterranean galleries, all built of hewn stones. Cut. It's funny they've. Oh, I got to redo that whole sentence. Come on. Cut. It looks like EUT there, but it's actually, there's a couple times now the C's look like E's. In San Salvador, which cover nearly 2 square miles and consist of vast terraces. I'm just going to go back a little further. He mentions ruins near El Pico. He mentions the ruins of El Pico near San Vicente in San Salvador, which cover nearly 2 square miles and consist of vast terraces, ruins of edifices, circular and square towers, and subterranean galleries, all built, cut. Oh, boy. He mentions the ruins of El Pico near San Vicente in San Salvador, which cover nearly 2 square miles and consist of vast terraces, ruins of edifices, circular and square towers, and subterranean galleries, all built of cut stones. A single carving has been found here on a block of stone. Remains of immense works exist in the district of Chontales, near the northern shore of Lake Nicaragua, and pottery found in Nicaragua. I've always had a problem pronouncing this name. I've always had a hard time saying Nicaragua. And pottery found in Nicaragua equals the best specimens of Mexico and Peru. Don Jose Antonio Uricha, cure of Utapia. I need my assistance for that one. I did double check it. What was it? It's a weird one. It's like hard to Hotiapa. Hutiapa. Don Antonio Uricha, cure of Utiapa. Hutiapa. Don Jose Antonio Uricha, cure of Jutiapa, gave the following account of a great ruin on a mountain in San Salvador, near the town of Comapa. It is called Sinia. I sweat. I realized that I sweat when I do this. I'm getting all hot. Sivola, Sinia. See, he's not. He's saying I've got the wrong word there. Mialo. Sania Mayayo. That's hard. It is called Sania Mayayo. The walls or remains of the city wall described an oval figure within which roads or streets may be traced, and there are various subterranean passages in many ruined edifices. The materials of construction are chiefly thin stones or a species of slate, united by a kind of element which in appearance resembles melted lead. It does not appear that he made a complete examination of the monuments, but he mentions 3 that gained his attention and left upon his mind a very strong impression. The first is a temple consecrated to the sun, chiefly excavated in the solid rock and having its entrance toward the east. Man, there's more E's that are supposed to be C's. Right there, consecrated and chiefly, both E's. I wonder if the C is broken on the typewriter. Having its entrance toward the east. Oh my God, it is. It's all E's from now on. Oh, the C is gone on the typewriter. Oh, this will be more challenging. Toward the east. Okay, toward the east. Where did I finish this? Okay, all the C's. Okay, so it's been a while now, but all the E's are all the C's are E's. So it's gonna be interesting. Should be fine. So that's carved, not earved. On the archway of the entrance are carved representations of the sun and moon. Hieroglyphics are found. That looks like a C. Uh-oh. Basi Relievi. Hieroglyphics are found in the interior. Besides the sculptured Basi Relievi, these stones bear hieroglyphics painted with a kind of red varnish which remains unimpaired. The second is a great stone slab covered with inscriptions or hieroglyphics. The third is a figure of a wild animal sculptured on a rock or stone of great size. The ruins of Yucatan. The ruins in Yucatan. The remains of ancient cities are abundant in the settled portion of Yucatan, which lies north of the Great Forest. Charnay found the country covered with them from north to south. Stevens states in the preface to his work on Yucatan that he visited 44 ruined cities or palaces in which such remains are still found, most of which were unknown to white men, even to those inhabiting the country. And he adds that time and the elements are hastening them to utter destruction. Previous to the Spanish conquest, the region known to us as Yucatan was called Maya. It is still called Maya by the natives among themselves, and this is the true name of the country. Why the Spaniards called it Yucatan is unknown, but the name is wholly arbitrary and without reason. It is said to have arisen from an odd mistake, that which It is said to have arisen from an odd mistake like that which occasioned the name given to one of the capes by Hernandez de Cordova. Being on the coast in 1517, he met some of the natives. Their Chakik. I wonder how that's pronounced. Kakik? Kakik? I'm going to double check that quickly. What do you think? Kakik? Kakik? The term cacique, which may appear in ancient America, cacique. 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 Their cacique said to him, Conex Katok, meaning come to our town. The Spaniard, supposing he had mentioned the name of the place, immediately named the project pointing of land. Projecting. All right, let's keep going here. The Spaniard, supposing he had mentioned the name of the place, immediately named the projecting point of land Cape Katok. It is called so still. At that time, the country was occupied by the people still known as Mayas. They all spoke the same language, which was one of. I'm struggling today. Okay, I'll get into the groove here. They all spoke the same language, which was one of a closely related family of tongues spoken in Guatemala, Chiapas, Western Honduras, and in some other districts of Central America and Mexico. Yucatan was then much more populous than at present. The people had more civilization, more regular industry, and more wealth. They were much more highly skilled in the arts of civilized life. They had cities and large towns and dwelling houses built of timber and covered with thatch, like those common in England, were scattered over all the rural districts. Some of the cities now found in ruins were then inhabited. This peninsula had been the seat of an important feudal monarchy, which arose probably after the Toltecs overthrew the very ancient kingdom of Xibalba. It was broken up by a rebellion of the feudal lords about 100 years previous to the arrival of the Spaniards. According to the Maya chronicles, its downfall occurred in the year 1420. Mayapan, the capital of this kingdom, was destroyed at that time and never afterward inhabited. Merida, the present capital of Yucatan, was built on the site of an ancient Maya city called Tihu. It is stated in the old Spanish accounts of Merida that it was built on that site because there was in the ruins an abundance of building material. There is mention of 2 mounds which furnished a vast amount of hewn stone. Okay, here we go. I'm going to get into a groove here. Mr. Stevens noticed in some of the edifices stones with sculptured figures from the ruins of ancient buildings, and he mentioned that a portion of an ancient building included an arch in the Maya style was retained in the construction of the Franciscan convent. Here's a picture while I'm breaking here, Great Mound at Mayapan, figure 34. Mayapan. We shall notice only some of the principal ruins in Yucatan, beginning with the Mayapan, the ancient capital. The remains of this city are situated about 10 leagues in a southern direction from Merida. They are spread over an extensive plain and overgrown by trees and other vegetation. The most prominent object seen by the approaching explorer is a great mound, 60 feet high and 100 feet square at the base. It is an imposing structure seen through trees and is itself overgrown like a wooden hill. Figure 34 shows one view of this. 4 stairways in a ruinous condition, 25 feet wide, lead up to an esplanade within 6 feet of the top, which is reached by a smaller stairway. The summit is a plain stone platform, 15 square feet. This, of course, 15 feet square. I should just do that properly. I was trying to show you more of the picture as I was reading, but that didn't work. The summit is a plain stone platform 15 feet square. This, of course, was a temple. Sculptured stones are scattered around the base, and within the mound, subterranean chambers have been discovered. It is probable that the principal edifices at Mayapan were not all built wholly of stone, for they have mostly disappeared. Only one remains, a circular stone building 25 feet in diameter, which stands on a pyramidal foundation 35 feet high. This is represented in figure 35. On the southwest side of it, on a terrace projecting from the mound, was a double row of columns without capitals, 8 feet apart. Figure 35, take a quick look while they're talking about it. Circular edifice at Mayapan. Oh, that looks cool. All overgrown, just like ruins right out of like a fantasy book or something. Crazy. All right, nice sketch. Okay, capitals. There we go. Excuse me. There are indications that this city was old and that the buildings had been more than once renewed. Brasseur de Bourbourg classes some of the foundations at Mayapan with the oldest seen at Palenque and Copan. This point, however, cannot be determined with sufficient accuracy to remove all doubt. Mayapan may have stood upon the foundations of a very ancient city which was several times rebuilt, but the city destroyed in 1420 could not have been as old as either Palenque or Copan. Uxmal. The ruins of Uxmal have been regarded as the most important in Yucatan, partly on account of the edifices that remain standing, but chiefly because they have been more visited and explored than the others. It is supposed, and circumstantial evidence appears to warrant the supposition, that this city has not been fully. To redo that guy. It is supposed, and circumstantial evidence appears to warrant the supposition, that this city had not been wholly deserted at the time of the Spanish conquest, although it had previously begun to be a ruin. It was wholly a ruin in 1673. The area covered by its remains is extensive. Charney makes it a league or more in diameter, but most of the structures have fallen and exist now only in fragments scattered over the ground. It may be that many of them were not built wholly of hewn stone and had not Egyptian solidity with their other characteristics. The most important of those remaining was named Casa del Gobernado by the Spaniards. It is 320 feet long and was built of hewn stone laid in mortar or cement. The faces of the walls are smooth up to the cornice. Then follows on all 4 sides one solid mass of rich, complicated, and elaborately sculptured ornaments forming a sort of arabesque. said that wrong at the end. One salt. Then followed. I'm going to redo that one. Scroll up while I'm breaking. Then follows on all four sides. Then follows on all four sides one solid mass of rich, complicated, and elaborately sculptured ornament forming a sort of arabesque. Figure 36 gives a view of the south end of this edifice, but no engraving can show all the details of the ornamentation. This building has 11 doorways in front and one at each end, all having wooden lintels which have fallen. The two principal rooms are 60 feet long and from 11 to 13 feet wide. There it is right there, figure 36, Casa de Gobernado, Uxmal. Wow. That must be one of the doors on the sides. Here's the double-headed figure, Casa de Gobernado as well. Decorations over the doorway. It stands on this. It's funny. It's like there's a sentence in here that's not that's missing. The arrangements there. This structure is long and narrow, blank. 131, 132. I guess that's just there's a period missing. Let me see what to do here. This structure is long and narrow. I guess I'll just say that. This structure is long and narrow. The arrangement and number of the rooms are shown in the following ground plan of the building, figure 37. There we go. Okay. Just make sure the record levels hasn't slipped down past 45. It stands on the summit of one of the grandest of the terraced foundations. This foundation, like all the others, is pyramidal. It has 3 terraces. The lowest is 3 feet high, 15 wide, and 575 long. The second is 20 feet high, 275 wide, and 545 long. The second The second is 20 feet high, 275 wide, and 545 long. The third, 19 feet high, 30 wide, and 360 long. Structures formerly existed on the second terrace, remains of which are visible. At the northwest corner, one of them still shows its dilapidated walls, portions of them being sufficiently complete to show what they were. This edifice was 94 feet long and 34 wide. It seems to have been finely finished in a style more simple than that of the great casa on the upper terrace. The figures of turtles sculptured along the upper edge of the cornice have been given it the current designation, House of the Turtles. Sculptured monuments have been found buried in the soil of the second terrace. The opening of a small low mound situated on it brought to view the double-headed figure shown in number 38. Figure 39 shows part of the sculptured decoration over the central doorway of Casa del Gobernado. Another important edifice at Uxmal has been named Casa de la Moña, House of the Nuns. It stands on a terraced foundation and is arranged around a quadrangular courtyard, 258 feet one way and 214 the other. The front structure is 279 feet long and has a gateway in the center 10 feet 8 inches wide leading into the court and 4 doors on each side of it. Excuse me. The outer face of the wall above the cornice is ornamented with sculptures. The terrace without and within the enclosure was found covered with a very dense growth of vegetation, which it was necessary to clear away before the walls could be carefully examined. All the doorways, save those in front, open on the court. Mr. Stevens found the four great facades fronting the courtyard, ornamented from one end to the other with the richest and most intricate carving known to the builders of Uxmal, presenting a scene of strange magnificence which surpasses any other now seen among its ruins. Stop there for a little picture of the ground plan right there. Reminds me of some of the temples in Egypt with the small rooms. I wonder if they're like the healing rooms or something like that, where people go in there just to rest and sleep and heal. Kabah. The long outer structure on the side facing the entrance had high turret-like elevations over each of its 13 doorways, all covered with sculptured ornaments. This building appears to have enclosed another of older date. Figure 40 shows the ground plan of Figure 40 shows the ground plan of La Monia. Other less important edifices in the ruins of Uxmal have been described by explorers, some of which stand on high pyramidal mounds, and inscriptions are found here, but they are not so abundant as at Palenque and Copan. Okay, I'm just going to check how to pronounce this. Kabah. 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 All right, it's just one or the other. Kabah or Kabah. Kabah or Kabah. Kabah. The ruins known as Kabah are on the site of what must have been one of the most imposing and important of the more ancient cities. Here, the most conspicuous object is a stone-faced mound, 180. That was a dumb mistake. Here, the most conspicuous object is a stone-faced mound, 180 feet square at the base, with a range of ruined apartments at the bottom. 300 or 400 yards from this mound is a terraced foundation, 20 feet high and 200 by 142 in extent, on which stand the remains of a great edifice. At the right of the esplanade, before it is a high range of ruined structures overgrown with trees, with an immense back wall on the outer line of the esplanade, perpendicular to the bottom of the terrace. On the left is another range of ruined buildings, and in the center a stone enclosure 27 feet square and 7 feet high, with sculptures and inscriptions around the base. Some of the ornamentation of this building has been described in the strongest terms of admiration. Mr. Stevens said of it, "The cornice running over the doorways, tried by the severest rules of art recognized among us, would embellish the architecture of any known era. At Uxmal, the walls were smooth below the cornice. Here they are covered with decorations from top to bottom. This field of ruins is extensive, and only a portion of it has been examined. It is so overgrown that exploration is very difficult. The buildings and mounds are much decayed, and they seem to be very old. It is believed that ruined edifices of which nothing is known are hidden among the trees in places which no explorer has approached." Mr. Stevens gave the first account of Kabah and described 3 other important edifices besides that already named. One of these he thought was, when entire, the most imposing structure at Kabah. It was 147 feet long by 106 wide and had 3 distinct stories, each successive story being smaller than that below it. Another, standing on the upper terrace of an elevated foundation, 170 feet long by 110 broad, was 164 feet in length and comparatively narrow. It is mentioned as a peculiarity of this edifice that it had pillars in its doorways used as supports. The other, found standing on a terrace, is also long and narrow and has a comparatively plain front. Remains of other buildings are visible, but in all cases they are so completely in ruins as to be little more than heaps of debris. Some of the ruins in the woods beyond that part of the field, which is most accessible, are visible from the great mound described. A resolute attempt to penetrate the forest brought the explorers in view of great edifices standing on an elevated terrace, estimated to be 800 feet long by 100 feet wide. Here we go. I'm taking a quick break. This is Ruined Arch at Kabah. Wow, that's cool. 100 feet wide. Check, check. The decorations seem to have been abundant and very rich, but the structures were in a sad state of dilapidation. One remarkable monument found at Kabah resembles a triumphal arch. It stands by itself on a ruined mound apart from the other structures. It is described as a lonely arch having a span of 14 feet, rising on the field of ruins in solitary grandeur. Figure 41 gives a view of it. Kabah was an ancient city. The ruins are old, and the city may have belonged to the first age of the Maya period. Chichen-Itza. The ruins of Chichen-Itza are situated east of Mayapan, about halfway between the eastern and western coasts of the peninsula of Yucatan. A public road runs through the space of ground over which they are spread. The area covered by them is something less than a mile in diameter. The general character of the ruined structures found here is in every respect like that shown by ruins already described. One of the great buildings at this place has a rude, unornamental exterior and does not stand on an artificial terrace, although the ground before it was excavated so as to give the appearance of an elevated foundation. It is 149 feet long by 48 deep. Its special peculiarity consists of a stone lintel in a very dark inner room, which has an inscription and a sculptured figure on the underside. The writing closely resembles that seen at Palenque and Copan. Was this sculptured stone made originally for the place it now occupies, or was it taken from the ruins of some older city which flourished and went to decay before Chichen-Itza was built? Another structure seen here closely resembles La Moña at Uxmal and bears the same name, but it differs somewhat from the Uxmal Moña in arrangement. In the descriptions, special mention is made of the richness and beauty of its ornaments. A noticeable edifice connected with the Moña, called the church, is 26 feet long, 14 deep, 31 high, and has 3 cornices, the spaces between them being covered with carved ornaments. There is but one room in it. One of the most picturesque ruins at Chichen-Itza is circular in form and stands on the upper level of a double terraced platform. It is 22 feet in diameter and has 4 doors which face the cardinal points. Above the cornice, it slopes gradually almost to a point, and the top is about 60 feet above the ground. The grand staircase of 20 steps leading up to this building is 45 feet wide and has a sort of balustrade formed of the entwined bodies of huge serpents. At some distance from this is the ruined structure known as the Casa Colorado. Colorado. At some distance from there's the Casa Colorado right there, figure 42. At some distance from this is the ruined structure known as the Casa Colorada, or Red House. This is shown in figure 42. It is 43 feet long by 23 deep and stands on a platform 62 feet long by 55 wide. It was ornamented above the cornice, but the decorations are much defaced by decay. A stone tablet extending the whole length of the back wall inside is covered by an inscription. A remarkable structure is found at this place, which Mr. Stevens called the gymnasium or tennis court. It consists of 2 immense parallel walls, 274 feet long, 30 thick, and 120 apart. On elevations facing the 2 ends of the open space between them, 100 feet from the ends of the walls, stand 2 edifices much ruined, but showing in their remains that they were richly ornamented. Midway in the length of the walls facing each other and 20 feet above the ground are 2 massive stone rings or circles 4 feet in diameter, each having in the center a hole 1 foot and 7 inches in diameter. On the borders around these holes, 2 entwined serpents are sculptured, as seen in figure 43. There's the figure right there, the great stone ring. Wow. I wonder if that's from that game that they played throwing the balls through the hole or something like that. There was a similar structure in the old city of Mexico and remains one of its. There was a similar structure in the old city of Mexico, and remains of one like it are found at Mayapan. They were probably used for games of some kind. Among the other ruins at Chichen-Itza are the remains of a lofty edifice which has two high ranges or stories. On the outside, the ornamentation is simple and tasteful, but the walls of its chambers are very elaborately decorated, mostly with sculptured designs which seem to have been painted. In one of the upper rooms, Mr. Stevens found a beam of sapot wood used as a lintel, which was covered with very elegantly carved decorations. The walls of this room were covered from the bottom to the top of the arched ceiling with painted designs similar to those seen in the Mexican picture writing. Decay had mutilated these pictures, but the colors were still bright. There are indications that painting was generally used by the Aboriginal builders, even on their sculptures. The colors seen in this room were green, red, yellow, blue, and reddish brown. Another edifice, standing on a high ground, is reached by means of the usual great stairway, which begins at the bottom with a sort of balustrade on each side, the ends of which are stone figures of heads of immense serpents. Not far from this is a singular ruin consisting of groups of small columns standing in rows 5 abreast, the tallest being not more than 6 feet high. Many of them have fallen. It is impossible to determine how they were used or what they mean. Other ruins in Yucatan: Izamal, Labna, Zai, and some of the other ruins are sufficiently important for special notice, but they present everywhere the same characteristics, differing a little in the style and method of ornamentation. At Labna, there is among the ruins an ancient gateway, beautiful in design and construction, a view of which is given in the frontispiece. The best account of some of the other ruins on this peninsula can be found in the volumes of Mr. Stevens entitled Incidents of Travel in Yucatan. At Zai, there is a singular building which, as seen at the distance by Mr. Stevens, had the appearance of a New England factory. But what seemed to be a factory is, in fact, nothing more than a massive wall with oblong openings, which runs along the middle of the roof and rises 30 feet above it. The building was below this wall, but the front part of it had fallen. Among the remains at Ziok is the great mound represented in figure 44. There is a remarkable ruin at Aki, at the south, which deserves mention. Here, at the summit of a great mound, very level and 225 feet by 50 in extent, stand 36 shafts or columns in 3 parallel rows. The columns are about 15 feet high and 4 feet square. Here we go. This is 44, the great mound at Zakok. Zakok. Still a bit to go. All right. This is good. Okay, here we go. The ruined Aki, which cover a great space, are ruder and more massive than most of the others. The island of Cozumel and the adjacent coast of Yucatan were populous when the Spaniards first went there, but the great towns then inhabited are now in ruins. Water is scarce on this peninsula. Water Water is scarce on this peninsula, and a sufficient supply is not obtained without considerable difficulty. The ancient inhabitants provided for this lack of water by constructing aqueducts or artificial ponds. These, or many of them doubtless, are as old as the oldest of the ruined cities. Intelligence, much skill in masonry, and much labor were required to construct them. They were paved with several courses of stone laid in cement, and their bottom wells or cavities were constructed. More than 40 such wells were found in the bottom of one of these aqueducts at Galal, which has been repaired and restored to use. A section of the bottom of this aqueduct is shown in Figure 45. In some places, long subterranean passages lead down to pools of water, which are used in the dry season. One of these subterranean reservoirs and the cavernous passage leading to it are shown in Figure 46. The reservoir is 450 feet below the surface of the ground, and the passage leading to it is about 1,400 feet long. Branching passages not shown lead to two or three other basins of water. The wooden lintels, which are common in Yucatan, do not appear in the other ruins, and there is a difference in the style of ornamentation between those at Palenque or Capan, for instance, and those at Uxmal. But everywhere the architecture is regulated by the same idea. The differences indicating nothing more than different periods and different phases of development in the history of the same people. Just going to scroll up to the subterranean reservoir there. Looks like there's pictures of the people hiking down there. Wow. Way there and down there. Hmm. Interesting. All right, here we go. Some of the great edifices in these old ruins, such as the palace at Palenque and the Casa del Gobernador at Uxmal, remind us of the communal buildings of the pueblos, and yet there is a wide difference between them. They are not alike either in character or purpose, although such great buildings as the palace may have been designed for the occupation of several families. There is no indication that communal residences were ever common in this part of the country. At the time of the conquest, the houses of the people were ordinary family dwellings made of wood, and we may reasonably suppose this fashion of building was handed down from the earlier ages. Herrera, who supposedly, mistakenly, Herrera. There's a picture of Figure 47, plan of the walls at Tulum. Hmm. Herrera, who supposed mistakenly that all the great stone edifices were temples, said in his account of Yucatan, there were so many and such stately stone buildings that it was amazing. And the greatest wonder was that, having no use of any metal, they were able to raise such structures, which seemed to have been temples, for their houses were all of timber and thatched. But they had the use of metals, and they had the art of making some of them admirable for use in cutting stone and carving wood. Sorry, I just got to turn my volume down here. I don't know why this is. Thought it went down. All right, there's a nice picture of the watchtower at Tulum. Carving wood. Check, check, check. Among the buildings of later date are some of those on the western coast, which were still inhabited 350 years ago. The city of, oh, excuse me. The city of Tulum was inhabited then. Figure 47 shows a ground plan of the walls of this city with the position of some of the ruined monuments. Within the walls are remains of finely constructed buildings on elevated foundations, none of them, however, very large. One of them had a wooden roof, and timber seems to have been considerably used here. The walls still standing were made of hewn stone. Remains of stone edifices exist all along this coast, but the whole region is now covered by a dense growth of trees and other vegetation. Tulum was seen in 1518 by Rialva, who sailed along the coast. At that time, the island of Cozumel, where noteworthy ruins are found, was inhabited by many people. Figure 48 shows one of the watchtowers on the walls of Tulum. And that's it for chapter 5. Tomorrow we'll do chapter 6, Antiquity of the Ruins. See how far through. We're about halfway through, it looks like. So I'll keep going on this book. Might as well get it here on video. So yeah, thanks for watching. Have a good weekend. Thanks for being here. Check out the live tab for the other books if you want to see the reading happening, or there's a whole bunch of other books in the catalog, obviously, at Adult Brain, also on Audible. Help support us and Spotify and all that. There's a podcast if you go to adultbrainca.ca. And yeah, thanks for watching and listening, and see you tomorrow. Love you.